Dr. Alan Hargrove was a man who took immense pride in his reputation as the toughest professor at Fairview College. Known for his sharp tongue and even sharper mind, he had spent 2 decades teaching calculus to students who often entered his classroom brimming with confidence but left humbled, if not outright defeated. His lectures were legendary, not because of their brilliance alone, but because of the way he wielded questions like weapons, singling out unsuspecting students to solve problems on the spot. For many, being called upon by Dr. Hargrove felt less like an opportunity to learn and more like stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champion. On this particular morning, however, something unusual caught his attention before class even began. As he stood at the front of the lecture hall organizing his notes, he noticed a new face among the usual crowd. The young man sat quietly near the back, wearing a plain gray hoodie and jeans that looked slightly worn. There was nothing remarkable about his appearance, no flashy accessories or expensive gadgets, but there was an air of calm focus about him that made Dr. Hargrove curious. He didn't recognize the student, which was odd because he prided himself on knowing every name in his relatively small class. When the bell rang and the room fell silent, Dr. Hargrove decided it was time to introduce himself to the newcomer. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice carrying just enough authority to command respect. Then, without missing a beat, he pointed toward the stranger. "You there, in the hoodie. Care to tell us your name?" The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of expectation. Heads turned and whispers rippled through the rows of desks. Everyone knew what came next. Once Dr. Hargrove singled someone out, they were fair game for whatever challenge he chose to throw their way. The young man glanced up calmly, unfazed by the sudden attention. With a slight nod, he replied, "Keanu Reeves." His tone was steady, almost casual, as though introducing himself was no big deal. But the moment those words left his lips, the entire room seemed to freeze. A few students exchanged incredulous looks while others leaned forward, trying to get a better glimpse of the actor sitting among them. Keanu Reeves? Keanu Reeves? What was he doing here? Dr. Hargrove, too, felt a flicker of surprise, but only for a second. If anything, this revelation made the situation all the more intriguing. Here was a world-famous movie star, someone whose face graced billboards and magazine covers, choosing to sit in his humble calculus class. It begged the question, why? Was this some kind of publicity stunt? Or perhaps a whim born out of boredom? Whatever the reason, Dr. Hargrove wasn't about to let the opportunity pass him by. After all, if there was one thing he loved more than solving equations, it was testing people's limits, and Keanu Reeves presented a particularly tantalizing puzzle. "Well, Mr. Reeves," Dr. Hargrove said, allowing a faint smirk to play across his lips, "I must say I'm honored to have you join us today. I trust you're prepared to tackle the intricacies of calculus with the same dedication you bring to your acting career." The sarcasm in his voice was subtle, but unmistakable. Some students snickered nervously. Others held their breath, waiting to see how Keanu would respond. Would he laugh it off? Walk out? Pretend he hadn't heard? Instead, Keanu simply smiled, a small, polite gesture that somehow managed to disarm the tension in the room. "I'm here to learn," he said evenly, "just like everyone else." The simplicity of his response threw Dr. Hargrove off balance for a brief moment. There was no arrogance, no defensiveness, just quiet assurance. Still, the professor wasn't ready to let his guard down. If anything, Keanu's composure only fueled his determination to push harder. "Very well," Dr. Hargrove replied, turning back to the board. "Let's dive right in, shall we? Today we'll be discussing derivatives, a cornerstone of calculus. Pay close attention, everyone, because I'll be calling on random students." Throughout the lecture, he emphasized the word random just enough to make it clear that no one was safe, not even celebrities. As he launched into his explanation, pacing back and forth with the energy of a seasoned performer, Keanu listened intently, his gaze fixed on the board. For most of the hour, Dr. Hargrove focused on delivering his usual rapid-fire delivery of concepts, formulas, and examples. Every so often, he paused to ask a question, targeting different students each time. Some stumbled over their answers, earning sympathetic groans from their peers. Others managed to scrape by with partial credit. Through it all, Keanu remained silent, taking notes with meticulous care. His pen moved steadily across the page, capturing every detail with precision. Finally, as the lecture drew to a close, Dr. Hargrove couldn't resist any longer. Turning to face the class once again, he zeroed in on Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his tone deliberately casual, "since you seem so eager to learn, let's put your knowledge to the test. Can you explain the concept of a derivative to the rest of the class?" The request was phrased politely enough, but the underlying challenge was clear. This wasn't just a question, it was a dare. Every eye in the room swiveled toward Keanu, anticipation crackling in the air. Would the Hollywood star rise to the occasion, or would he falter under pressure? For a long moment, Keanu said nothing. Instead, he closed his notebook, placed his pen neatly beside it, and stood up. The movement was unhurried, almost deliberate, as if he were giving himself time to gather his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a warmth and clarity that immediately commanded attention. "A derivative," Keanu began, "is essentially a measure of how something changes. Think of it as the rate at which one quantity varies with respect to another. For example, if you're driving a car, your speed is the derivative of your position over time. It tells you how fast or slow you're moving at any given moment." He paused briefly, glancing around the room to ensure everyone was following along. "In mathematical terms, we calculate derivatives using limits to determine the slope of a curve at a specific point." As Keanu continued, breaking down the concept into simple, relatable terms, the atmosphere in the lecture hall shifted. Students leaned forward, hanging on his every word. Even Dr. Hargrove found himself momentarily captivated, though he quickly masked his reaction with a neutral expression. By the time Keanu finished, the room erupted into spontaneous applause, a rare occurrence in Dr. Hargrove's notoriously demanding class. But while the other students cheered, Dr. Hargrove felt a twinge of unease settling in the pit of his stomach. This wasn't supposed to happen. Celebrities weren't supposed to excel in obscure subjects like calculus. They were meant to stumble awkwardly, providing fodder for stories later shared in faculty lounges. Yet here was Keanu Reeves, not only holding his own but excelling, with a grace that bordered on infuriating. Little did Dr. Hargrove know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about teaching, learning, and the unassuming power of humility. The applause died down slowly, but the energy in the room remained electric. Dr. Hargrove stood at the front of the lecture hall, his face a mask of practiced indifference, though his mind raced with questions. How could someone like Keanu Reeves, world-famous actor, action star, and cultural icon, possess such a deep understanding of calculus? Was this some elaborate prank? Or worse, had he underestimated Keanu from the start? The thought gnawed at him, not because he disliked being wrong, but because it challenged the very foundation of how he viewed his students. Clearing his throat to regain control of the class, Dr. Hargrove stepped forward, his gaze locked firmly on Keanu. "Impressive," he said, his tone clipped and measured. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Understanding theory is one thing, applying it is another. Let me give you a problem to solve, one that requires more than just textbook knowledge." Without waiting for a response, he turned toward the board and began scribbling furiously. Numbers, variables, and symbols filled the space in chaotic yet precise strokes, forming an integral equation that would have sent most students into a panic. When he finished, he stepped aside, tapping the board with his marker. "Here's your task, Mr. Reeves. Solve this." He folded his arms across his chest, his expression unreadable. The equation was complex, involving multiple layers of integration and substitution, a challenge even for his brightest students. It wasn't designed to be impossible, but it certainly wasn't meant to be easy either. This was Dr. Hargrove's way of testing limits, pushing boundaries, and proving points, all wrapped up in one deceptively simple question. Keanu didn't hesitate. Rising from his seat, he walked to the board with steady, deliberate steps. There was no trace of nervousness or self-doubt in his demeanor, only quiet confidence. Picking up a piece of chalk, he glanced at the equation briefly before turning to address the class. "This is a good example of when we need to break things down into smaller parts," he said, his voice calm and clear. "Integration can feel overwhelming if you try to tackle everything at once, but by focusing on each component individually, it becomes manageable." With that, he began solving the problem step by step, narrating his process aloud as he worked. First, he identified the inner function within the nested integral, explaining why substitution would simplify the calculation. Then, he carefully rewrote the equation, replacing variables with placeholders to make the structure easier to follow. As he moved through the solution, his explanations were thorough yet accessible, transforming what might have seemed like abstract jargon into something tangible and logical. The students watched in awe, their initial skepticism melting away with every stroke of the chalk. Even those who struggled with basic concepts found themselves able to follow along, thanks to Keanu's patient breakdown of the problem. Meanwhile, Dr. Hargrove observed silently from the sidelines, his arms still crossed tightly over his chest. At first, he tried to find fault in Keanu's approach, perhaps a missed detail or an incorrect assumption, but there was none. Every step was flawless, every explanation grounded in sound mathematical reasoning. By the time Keanu reached the final answer, the entire class erupted into applause once again. Some students cheered loudly, while others whispered excitedly to their neighbors about what they had just witnessed. For many, it was the first time they'd seen calculus presented in such a relatable and engaging way. They weren't just learning formulas. They were seeing how math could be applied creatively to solve real-world problems. Dr. Hargrove, however, wasn't ready to concede defeat. Not publicly, at least. Clapping his hands together sharply to silence the room, he fixed Keanu with a piercing stare. "Well done," he admitted grudgingly, though the compliment felt more like a reluctant acknowledgement than genuine praise. "You've demonstrated a solid grasp of the material, but tell me, Mr. Reeves, where did you acquire such expertise? Surely this isn't something you picked up overnight?" Keanu turned to face the professor, his expression thoughtful. Setting the chalk down on the ledge beneath the board, he took a moment to gather his thoughts before responding. "Math has always fascinated me," he began, his voice carrying a reflective tone. "Growing up, I loved puzzles and patterns, anything that required thinking outside the box. When I discovered mathematics, it felt like unlocking a secret language that explained the world around me. Over the years, I started reading books, watching lectures online, and working through problems whenever I had free time. It became a passion, a way to explore ideas beyond the surface level." His words hung in the air, resonating deeply with everyone in the room. To the students, Keanu's admission was inspiring. Here was someone who had achieved fame and success in one field, but chose to pursue knowledge in another purely out of curiosity. It reminded them that learning wasn't confined to classrooms or textbooks. It was a lifelong journey driven by passion and perseverance. For Dr. Hargrove, however, the revelation sparked a mix of emotions: admiration, frustration, and perhaps a touch of envy. He had spent decades mastering his craft, yet here was Keanu, effortlessly bridging the gap between theory and application without formal training. Unable to resist probing further, Dr. Hargrove pressed on. "And what, may I ask, do you hope to gain from taking my course? You clearly already possess a strong foundation in calculus. Why bother enrolling in an introductory class?" Keanu smiled faintly, as though he had anticipated the question. "I wanted to challenge myself," he replied simply. "There's always more to learn, no matter how much you think you know. Plus, I enjoy the camaraderie of a classroom setting, the exchange of ideas, the collaborative effort to solve problems. It's different from studying alone, and I value that experience." The sincerity in his voice left little room for argument. Dr. Hargrove nodded slowly, though his expression remained guarded. On one hand, he couldn't deny the authenticity of Keanu's intentions. On the other hand, the actor's presence disrupted the dynamic he had carefully cultivated over the years. Students weren't supposed to outshine their professors. at least not so openly. Yet despite his reservations, Dr. Hargrove couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect for Keanu's dedication. In a world obsessed with shortcuts and instant gratification, here was someone who valued hard work and intellectual growth for their own sake. As the class drew to a close, Dr. Hargrove dismissed the students with a curt wave of his hand. "We'll continue exploring these concepts next session," he announced, his tone brisk. "Be prepared to dive deeper." With that, he gathered his notes and retreated to his office, leaving behind a buzz of excitement among the students. For them, the day's events were nothing short of extraordinary. Not only had they witnessed a Hollywood star solve a challenging calculus problem, but they had also gained a newfound appreciation for the subject itself. Outside the lecture hall, Keanu lingered for a moment, exchanging smiles and nods with several classmates who approached him to express their admiration. Though he remained humble, graciously deflecting compliments with a quiet charm, it was clear that he had made an impression. By the time he finally left the building, word of his performance had spread across campus, sparking conversations and speculation about what might happen next. Meanwhile, back in his office, Dr. Hargrove sat at his desk, staring blankly at the stack of papers in front of him. Try as he might to focus on grading assignments or preparing for future lectures, his mind kept returning to Keanu. Who was this man, really? And what lessons could he, a seasoned professor, possibly learn from a student who defied all expectations? Little did he know, the answers to those questions would unfold in ways he never anticipated, reshaping not only his perspective on teaching, but also his understanding of what it truly meant to be a lifelong learner. The days following Keanu's impressive performance in Dr. Hargrove's calculus class became the talk of Fairview College. Students whispered about it in hallways, shared stories during lunch breaks, and even posted about it on social media. "Did you hear? Keanu Reeves solved that impossible integral," was a phrase repeated so often that it started to feel like campus folklore. For many, it wasn't just the fact that a celebrity had aced a difficult math problem. It was the way he carried himself with humility and grace that left a lasting impression. It made people wonder, what else was this man capable of? Dr. Hargrove, however, found himself wrestling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he couldn't deny the impact Keanu was having on his students. Attendance in his lectures had skyrocketed. Students who once dreaded calculus now arrived early, eager to see if Keanu would be called upon again. The energy in the classroom had shifted dramatically, transforming from a place of dread into one of curiosity and excitement. But on the other hand, Dr. Hargrove felt an unsettling sense of unease. He prided himself on being the authority figure, the one everyone looked up to for guidance. Yet here was Keanu, effortlessly commanding attention. Not because of his fame, but because of his genuine passion for learning. One afternoon, after dismissing his class, Dr. Hargrove lingered behind, pretending to organize papers while discreetly observing Keanu. The actor stayed seated, reviewing his notes with a focused intensity that seemed almost meditative. There was no pretense, no showmanship, just pure dedication. Finally, unable to resist any longer, Dr. Hargrove approached him. "Mr. Reeves," he began, his tone softer than usual. "Do you have a moment?" Keanu looked up, surprised, but not startled. "Of course," he replied, closing his notebook and giving the professor his full attention. Dr. Hargrove hesitated, unsure how to phrase what he wanted to say. After a brief pause, he settled on a direct approach. "I'll admit I didn't expect someone of your stature to take such an interest in calculus. Most celebrities wouldn't bother with something so academic." The words came out more awkwardly than he intended, but Keanu didn't seem offended. Instead, he chuckled lightly, as though amused by the assumption. "I'm not sure celebrity is the right word to describe me," Keanu said with a shrug. "And honestly, I don't think about labels when I'm studying something I love. Math isn't about status or recognition. It's about discovery. Every equation tells a story, and I enjoy figuring out how those stories connect." His response caught Dr. Hargrove off guard. It was so earnest, so devoid of ego, that it forced the professor to reconsider his own motivations. Why did he teach? Calculus? Was it because he genuinely loved sharing knowledge, or was it because he enjoyed the power dynamic? The satisfaction of being the smartest person in the room. The thought unsettled him, but it also intrigued him. Maybe there was something to be learned from Keanu's perspective. Tell me, Dr. Hargrove ventured cautiously, what draws you to mathematics specifically? Out of all the subjects you could explore, why this one? Keanu leaned back slightly, considering the question before answering. Mathematics is universal, he explained. It doesn't care about who you are or where you come from. 2 + 2 = 4, whether you're a farmer in India or an actor in Hollywood. That kind of consistency is beautiful. Plus, math helps us understand patterns in nature, in art, in human behavior. Once you start noticing them, you realize they're everywhere. It's like seeing the world through a different lens. Dr. Hargrove nodded slowly, absorbing Keanu's words. He had spent years teaching formulas and techniques, but he rarely paused to reflect on the deeper significance of what he was teaching. To him, math had always been a tool, a means to an end. Hearing Keanu speak about it with such reverence reminded him of why he had fallen in love with the subject in the first place. Their conversation continued long after the lecture hall had emptied, delving into topics ranging from differential equations to the Fibonacci sequence. At one point, Dr. Hargrove pulled out a particularly challenging problem he had been working on, a theoretical scenario involving optimization, and posed it to Keanu. To his astonishment, Keanu didn't just solve it. He offered insights that Dr. Hargrove hadn't considered, drawing connections between the math and real-world applications in engineering and design. By the time they parted ways, both men felt a newfound respect for each other. For Dr. Hargrove, it was the realization that Keanu wasn't just a talented student. He was a peer, someone whose intellectual curiosity matched, if not surpassed, his own. And for Keanu, it was the validation that his efforts to learn were appreciated, even by someone as intimidating as Dr. Hargrove. Word of their interaction spread quickly, thanks in part to a few curious students who overheard snippets of their discussion. Rumors began circulating that Dr. Hargrove and Keanu were collaborating on some kind of project, though neither confirmed nor denied it. What was undeniable, however, was the change in the professor's demeanor. His lectures became less rigid, more conversational. He started incorporating real-world examples into his explanations, encouraging students to think critically rather than simply memorize formulas. Some even noticed him smiling, a rare sight in previous semesters. One day, midway through the semester, Dr. Hargrove announced a special assignment, a group project requiring students to apply calculus to solve a practical problem. The catch? Each group would present their findings to the entire class, with Keanu volunteering to help facilitate discussions. This decision sent ripples of excitement and nerves through the student body. Working alongside a Hollywood star was thrilling, but the pressure to impress him, and Dr. Hargrove, was immense. As the groups formed and began brainstorming ideas, Keanu took on the role of mentor rather than leader. He moved from table to table, offering suggestions and asking thoughtful questions that pushed students to dig deeper. When one group struggled, to model the trajectory of a projectile, Keanu encouraged them to break the problem into smaller parts, guiding them toward a solution without directly giving it away. His patience and encouragement inspired confidence, turning moments of frustration into opportunities for growth. Meanwhile, Dr. Hargrove watched from afar, marveling at how seamlessly Keanu integrated himself into the fabric of the class. There was no grandstanding, no attempt to overshadow anyone. Instead, Keanu led by example, demonstrating that learning was a collaborative process. It was a lesson Dr. Hargrove realized he needed to internalize as well. Teaching wasn't about asserting dominance. It was about fostering an environment where everyone could thrive. By the time presentation day arrived, the atmosphere in the lecture hall was electric. Each group showcased their projects with pride, explaining everything from optimizing manufacturing processes to predicting traffic flow using calculus. When Keanu stepped forward to offer feedback, his comments were constructive yet kind, highlighting strengths while gently pointing out areas for improvement. Even Dr. Hargrove, known for his harsh critiques, softened his approach, mirroring Keanu's supportive style. As the final presentation wrapped up, the entire class erupted into applause, not just for the students, but for Keanu and Dr. Hargrove as well. In that moment, it was clear that something remarkable had happened. What began as a clash of egos had evolved into a partnership, one that transcended titles and expectations. Both men had grown, not only as educators and learners, but as individuals, willing to embrace vulnerability and change. For Dr. Hargrove, the experience served as a humbling reminder that teaching was a two-way street. You couldn't inspire others unless you were open to being inspired yourself. And for Keanu, it reinforced the joy of pursuing passions outside the spotlight, proving that true fulfillment came not from accolades, but from meaningful connections and shared discoveries. As the semester drew to a close, whispers of gratitude and admiration echoed through the halls of Fairview College. Neither Keanu nor Dr. Hargrove knew exactly what the future held, but one thing was certain. Their paths crossing had sparked a transformation that would leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. The final weeks of the semester brought a flurry of activity to Fairview College. Students scrambled to complete assignments, prepare for exams, and polish their group projects for Dr. Hargrove's calculus class. The buzz around campus was palpable, but what set this term apart from others was the unique dynamic between Keanu Reeves and Dr. Alan Hargrove. Their unlikely partnership had transformed not only the classroom environment, but also the way students viewed learning itself. What began as a tense standoff had evolved into a collaboration that inspired everyone who witnessed it. One crisp afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the windows of the lecture hall, Dr. Hargrove stood at the front of the room, addressing his students with an uncharacteristic warmth. "Today," he announced, "we'll be discussing applications of calculus in real-world scenarios, something we've touched on throughout the semester, but haven't fully explored. I want you to think critically about how these concepts apply, beyond textbooks and equations." His tone was inviting, almost encouraging, which caught many students off guard. Gone was the stern professor who once intimidated them. In his place was someone genuinely invested in their growth. Keanu sat quietly, near the back, listening intently as Dr. Hargrove introduced examples ranging from physics to economics. When the professor paused to ask if anyone had questions, Keanu raised his hand. "What about biology?" he suggested. "Calculus plays a huge role in understanding things like population growth or drug dosage rates. Maybe we could look at those areas too?" The suggestion sparked immediate interest. Several students nodded enthusiastically, eager to explore topics they hadn't considered before. Dr. Hargrove, though momentarily surprised by Keanu's input, quickly adapted. "Excellent point," he said, turning to the board to sketch out a basic model of exponential growth. "Let's dive into this together." As the discussion unfolded, Keanu chimed in periodically, offering insights that enriched the conversation. He explained how differential equations could predict changes in animal populations over time, or calculate optimal treatment schedules for patients undergoing chemotherapy. His explanations were clear and relatable, making complex ideas accessible even to those struggling with the basics. By the end of the session, the entire class seemed energized, their curiosity reignited. Afterward, Dr. Hargrove approached Keanu privately. "You have a knack for making difficult concepts seem simple," he remarked, his voice tinged with admiration. "I don't think I've ever seen my students so engaged." Keanu smiled modestly. "It's all about finding connections," he replied. "When people see how math applies to things they care about, it stops feeling abstract. That's when learning becomes fun." Their exchange marked a turning point in their relationship. No longer adversaries or even reluctant allies, they were now collaborators united by a shared goal: to inspire a deeper appreciation for mathematics. Over the next few days, they worked closely to refine the curriculum, incorporating more interdisciplinary examples and hands-on activities. They encouraged students to think creatively, challenging them to find innovative solutions to problems both inside and outside the textbook. Word of their efforts spread beyond the calculus class, drawing attention from faculty members across departments. One day, Dr. Emily Carter, a professor of environmental science, stopped by after hearing about the integration of ecological models into the syllabus. "This is brilliant," she told Dr. Hargrove during a brief meeting. "Would you mind if I sat in on your next lecture? I'd love to see how you're connecting math to sustainability issues." Dr. Hargrove agreed, pleased by the opportunity to showcase his revamped approach. On the day of the lecture, Dr. Carter joined the class, taking notes as Keanu and Dr. Hargrove co-led a session on using calculus to analyze carbon emissions and climate change trends. The students responded enthusiastically, proposing ideas for reducing energy consumption and modeling the impact of renewable resources. By the end of the hour, Dr. Carter was beaming. "This is exactly the kind of cross-disciplinary thinking we need," she said afterward. "Maybe we should consider team teaching a course someday." The idea took root, planting seeds for future collaborations that extended far beyond the confines of the calculus classroom. For Keanu, watching these interactions unfold was deeply rewarding. He hadn't anticipated the ripple effect his presence would create, but he embraced it wholeheartedly. Every new connection, every spark of inspiration, reinforced his belief in the power of education to bring people together. As the semester neared its conclusion, the group presentations loomed large on everyone's minds. Each team had poured countless hours into their projects, determined to deliver something memorable. On the day of the presentations, the lecture hall buzzed with anticipation. Friends, professors, and even a few curious outsiders filled the seats, eager to see what the students had accomplished. The first group stepped forward, nervously clutching their notes. Their project focused on optimizing delivery routes for a fictional company, using calculus to minimize travel time and fuel costs. As they presented their findings, Keanu offered gentle guidance, helping them clarify points and articulate their reasoning. When they finished, the audience erupted into applause, bolstering their confidence. One by one, the groups followed, each tackling a different challenge with creativity and rigor. A standout presentation came from a team that modeled the spread of infectious diseases, demonstrating how calculus could predict outbreak patterns and inform public health strategies. Another group designed a system to optimize water usage in agriculture, emphasizing the importance of sustainable practices. Each project reflected not only technical skill, but also a deep understanding of how math intersected with real-world issues. When the final team concluded their presentation, Dr. Hargrove stepped forward to address the class. "I'm incredibly proud of all of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me, and yourselves, that calculus isn't just about numbers. It's a tool for solving problems, for making the world a better place. And none of this would have been possible without your hard work, and without the contributions of someone very special." He turned to Keanu, who stood quietly at the side of the room. "Mr. Reeves, I owe you a debt of gratitude. You've reminded us all why we fell in love with teaching and learning in the first place. Thank you for being part of this journey." The room erupted into applause once more, this time directed squarely at Keanu. He looked momentarily taken aback, then smiled, warmly, waving off the praise with characteristic humility. "Thank you," he said simply, "for letting me be here, for pushing me to grow, and for reminding me that learning never stops." In the days that followed, as final grades were submitted and the semester officially ended, the impact of Keanu's time at Fairview College lingered. Students spoke fondly of the lessons they'd learned, not just in calculus but in perseverance, teamwork, and the joy of discovery. Faculty members marveled at the shift in Dr. Hargrove's teaching style, crediting Keanu with helping him rediscover his passion for education. For Dr. Hargrove, the experience was transformative. He realized that teaching wasn't about maintaining control or proving superiority. It was about fostering curiosity and empowering others to reach their full potential. And for Keanu, it was a reminder of why he pursued knowledge in the first place, not for recognition, but for the sheer love of understanding the world around him. Though Keanu eventually returned to his life in the spotlight, his influence remained etched into the fabric of Fairview College. His story became a testament to the idea that greatness isn't defined by titles or achievements. It's measured by the positive impact you leave on others. And in that sense, both Keanu and Dr. Hargrove had succeeded beyond measure, proving that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places. As the semester drew to a close, the atmosphere at Fairview College was filled with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. Students bustled about, exchanging phone numbers and making plans for winter break, while professors wrapped up their final lectures with reflective remarks. For Dr. Alan Hargrove's calculus class, however, the end of the term carried an extra layer of significance. It wasn't just the culmination of months of hard work. It was the conclusion of a journey that had transformed everyone involved: students, teacher, and even the unexpected star pupil, Keanu Reeves. On the last day of class, Dr. Hargrove stood at the front of the lecture hall, his usual sharpness softened by a rare smile. "Today," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "we're not here to discuss derivatives or integrals. We're here to reflect on what we've achieved together, and to say goodbye." He paused, glancing around the room at the faces of his students. Some looked eager, others nervous, but all were attentive. Then his gaze settled on Keanu, who sat quietly in his usual spot near the back, his expression thoughtful. "Before we go any further," Dr. Hargrove continued, "I want to acknowledge someone who has made this semester unforgettable. Mr. Reeves, would you mind standing up?" Keanu hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with being singled out, but eventually rose to his feet. The room erupted into applause, spontaneous and heartfelt. Students clapped enthusiastically, some even cheering as Keanu offered a small, self-conscious wave. Dr. Hargrove waited for the noise to subside before speaking again. "When I first met Mr. Reeves, I'll admit, I underestimated him. I assumed, wrongly, that his presence here was either a publicity stunt or a fleeting curiosity. But over the weeks, he proved me wrong in the best possible way. Not only did he excel academically, but he also inspired all of us to think differently about mathematics and about ourselves." Keanu shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to such public praise. When the applause finally died down, he spoke softly. "Thank you, Dr. Hargrove, and thank you all," he said, addressing the class. "Being part of this group has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. You've reminded me why I love learning so much, not because it's easy, but because it challenges you to grow. And if anything I've done has helped any of you feel more confident in your abilities, then I'm grateful for that." His words resonated deeply with the students. Many nodded in agreement, their eyes reflecting admiration and respect. For them, Keanu wasn't just a celebrity-turned-classmate. He was a mentor, a collaborator, and in many ways, a role model. His humility and dedication had shown them that success wasn't about fame or accolades. It was about passion, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace challenges. After the brief ceremony, the class dispersed, leaving Dr. Hargrove and Keanu alone in the lecture hall. They lingered for a while, chatting casually about everything from future academic pursuits to favorite math problems. At one point, Dr. Hargrove pulled out a book from his bag, a worn copy of Calculus, An Intuitive and Physical Approach by Morris Klein. "I think you'll enjoy this," he said, handing it to Keanu. "It's less technical and more philosophical, which seems right up your alley." Keanu accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. "Thank you," he said, running his fingers over the cover. "This means a lot." They shared a quiet laugh, the kind born of mutual respect and camaraderie, before parting ways. In the days that followed, life at Fairview College slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary semester. Students filed out of dorms, packed up apartments, and headed home for the holidays. Faculty members retreated to their offices to grade papers and plan for the next term. Yet, despite the lull, the legacy of Keanu's time at the college continued to ripple through the community. For Dr. Hargrove, the experience had reignited his passion for teaching. He found himself experimenting with new methods, incorporating storytelling and real-world applications into his lessons. During faculty meetings, he often referenced anecdotes from his calculus class, encouraging colleagues to adopt similar approaches. "We're not just teaching subjects," he told them during one session. "We're shaping minds. If we can make learning meaningful, we can change lives." Meanwhile, Keanu's influence extended far beyond the classroom. Inspired by his example, several students decided to pursue careers in STEM fields, while others vowed to approach their studies with renewed enthusiasm. One student, Sarah Mendez, went so far as to start a campus club called Math Beyond Numbers, dedicated to exploring the intersection of mathematics with art, science, and social issues. When asked about her motivation, she credited Keanu. "He showed me that math isn't just about solving problems on paper," she explained. "It's about solving problems in the world." Even outside Fairview, news of Keanu's academic adventure gained traction. Local newspapers picked up the story, highlighting how a Hollywood icon had quietly excelled in a subject many feared. Online, forums buzzed with discussions about the incident, with users sharing memes and jokes, but also expressing admiration for Keanu's intellectual curiosity. Social media posts praising his humility and dedication went viral, further cementing his reputation as a beloved figure both on-screen and off. Back in Los Angeles, Keanu resumed his busy schedule, balancing film projects with personal interests. But the lessons he'd learned at Fairview stayed with him. In interviews, he occasionally mentioned his time at the college, describing it as a humbling yet enriching experience. "People always ask me why I took a calculus class," he once said during a talk show appearance. "The truth is, I didn't do it for recognition or to prove anything. I did it because I wanted to learn something new. And honestly, I ended up learning more than I ever expected, not just about math, but about people and collaboration." Dr. Hargrove kept in touch with Keanu, sending occasional emails to update him on developments at the college. In return, Keanu shared articles and videos related to mathematics, always eager to continue the conversation. Their correspondence became a source of inspiration for both men, reminding them of the bond they'd formed and the impact they'd had on each other. Months later, when the spring semester rolled around, Dr. Hargrove implemented changes based on what he'd learned from Keanu. He introduced interdisciplinary workshops, inviting guest speakers from various fields to demonstrate how calculus applied to their work. He also launched a mentorship program, pairing advanced students with beginners to foster a sense of community within the department. To his delight, enrollment in his classes soared, with students citing his innovative methods as a key factor in their decision to sign up. One evening, as Dr. Hargrove prepared for his first lecture of the new term, he received an unexpected email. It was from Keanu, who wrote to express his support and share exciting news. He was considering enrolling in another course, this time focusing on advanced differential equations. "I hope you'll let me join your class again," Keanu joked in the message. "Though I promise to keep my hoodie at home." Dr. Hargrove chuckled as he read the email, feeling a surge of pride and anticipation. While he couldn't guarantee Keanu's return, he knew that the actor's spirit would remain a guiding force in his teaching. Whether or not Keanu came back, the lessons he'd imparted about resilience, humility, and the joy of discovery would continue to shape the lives of countless students. As Dr. Hargrove stepped into the lecture hall to begin his new semester, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Teaching wasn't just a job. It was an opportunity to inspire, to challenge, and to connect. And thanks to Keanu Reeves, he had rediscovered the magic of that mission. Whatever the future held, one thing was certain: the story of the calculus professor and the math genius turned celebrity would endure, not as a tale of competition, but as a testament to the transformative power of learning and of believing in the potential of others. Spring arrived at Fairview College, bringing with it a sense of renewal. The trees on campus were budding, the air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers, and students returned from winter break with fresh energy. For Dr. Alan Hargrove, this semester felt different, not because of the weather or the new faces in his classroom, but because of the lasting impact of Keanu Reeves's presence during the previous term. Though Keanu hadn't officially enrolled in another course, His influence lingered like a gentle breeze, shaping the way both teachers and students approached learning. Dr. Hargrove had taken everything he'd learned from Keanu to heart. His lectures now brimmed with real-world examples that connected math to everyday life. He encouraged questions, no matter how simple or complex, and fostered an environment where mistakes were seen as opportunities for growth rather than failure. Even his toughest challenges came with a smile, a subtle reminder that learning was meant to be engaging, not intimidating. Students responded positively, their confidence growing week by week. Some even joked that they wished every professor could teach like Dr. Hargrove did now. Meanwhile, Keanu remained a topic of conversation across campus. Stories about his time in calculus class continued to circulate, inspiring students to push themselves beyond perceived limits. One student, Alex Carter, decided to switch majors after realizing how much he enjoyed applying math to engineering problems, a decision sparked by memories of Keanu's enthusiasm for interdisciplinary thinking. Another, Mia Rodriguez, began tutoring struggling classmates, channeling Keanu's patient and supportive approach. It wasn't just his intellectual prowess that left a mark. It was his humility and genuine love for learning that resonated most deeply. Though Keanu was back in Los Angeles juggling film projects and personal interests, he stayed connected to the academic world in ways that surprised even himself. During downtime on set, he found himself sketching graphs or working through equations, using math as a form of mental relaxation. Friends teased him about his secret double life, but Keanu simply laughed. "Math keeps me grounded," he told them. "It reminds me there's always more to learn." Occasionally, Keanu would send emails to Dr. Hargrove, sharing articles about mathematical breakthroughs or asking questions about advanced topics he'd been exploring on his own. Their exchanges became less formal over time, evolving into something akin to friendship. In one message, Keanu mentioned that he'd started reading books on chaos theory, fascinated by how unpredictable systems could still follow underlying rules. "I never thought I'd get hooked on something so abstract," he wrote, "but here we are." Dr. Hargrove replied with enthusiasm, recommending further reading materials and offering to discuss concepts whenever Keanu needed clarification. These conversations reignited his own curiosity, prompting him to delve deeper into areas of mathematics he hadn't explored since graduate school. Together, they formed an unlikely duo, a seasoned professor and a self-taught actor-turned-math enthusiast, united by their shared passion for discovery. By mid-spring, word of Keanu's continued interest in academia reached other faculty members. Dr. Emily Carter, the environmental science professor who had attended one of Dr. Hargrove's lectures the previous semester, approached him with an idea. "What if we hosted a symposium?" she suggested. "We could bring together experts from different fields to show students how math intersects with everything, from climate modeling to artificial intelligence." The idea excited Dr. Hargrove, who immediately envisioned Keanu playing a role in the event. With Dr. Carter's help, he drafted an invitation, hoping Keanu might agree to participate. To their delight, he accepted enthusiastically. "Of course," he replied via email. "This sounds amazing. Let me know how I can contribute." When the day of the symposium arrived, the college auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Students, professors, and even local community members packed the space, eager to hear from speakers representing diverse disciplines. Topics ranged from cryptography to epidemiology, each presentation emphasizing the critical role of mathematics in solving real-world problems. Between sessions, attendees mingled, exchanging ideas and marveling at the connections between seemingly unrelated fields. Keanu's segment came toward the end of the program. Standing on stage under soft lighting, he began by thanking everyone for welcoming him back. "I'm not a mathematician," he admitted humbly, "but I've come to appreciate how powerful numbers can be. They're not just symbols on a page, they're tools for understanding the universe." He went on to share anecdotes from his journey, describing moments when math had illuminated patterns in nature or helped him grasp complex ideas in filmmaking. His talk was short, yet impactful, leaving the audience inspired and reflective. Afterward, during a Q&A session, a young woman raised her hand timidly. "Mr. Reeves," she asked, "how do you stay motivated when things get hard?" Like, what keeps you going when you feel stuck? Keanu smiled warmly, pausing to consider the question. Honestly, I remind myself that being stuck is part of the process. Whether it's acting, math, or anything else, growth comes from pushing through those tough moments. You don't have to have all the answers right away. Just keep moving forward. And remember, you're not alone. Ask for help when you need it. That's something I've learned from people like Dr. Hargrove. His response earned applause, but more importantly, it resonated deeply with listeners. Many scribbled notes in their journals, determined to carry his advice into their own lives. By the time the symposium concluded, the atmosphere was electric, filled with renewed determination and excitement. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Hargrove noticed a shift among his students. They tackled problems with greater confidence, sought out collaborative opportunities, and embraced challenges without fear of failure. The symposium had planted seeds of inspiration that continued to grow, reminding everyone that education was a lifelong endeavor. As for Keanu, the experience reinforced his belief in the value of pursuing passions outside traditional boundaries. While he remained committed to his career in entertainment, he also carved out time to explore new interests, attending online courses, and participating in educational events whenever possible. His journey served as a testament to the idea that learning didn't stop once you left school. It evolved alongside you, opening doors you never knew existed. Dr. Hargrove often reflected on how far he'd come since the first day Keanu walked into his classroom. What began as a clash of egos had blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect and admiration. Through Keanu, he'd rediscovered the joy of teaching, not as a means of asserting authority, but as a way of empowering others to see the beauty in knowledge. Years later, when alumni returned to Fairview College for reunions, they spoke fondly of the semester when Keanu Reeves took calculus. It wasn't just the novelty of having a celebrity in class that made it memorable. It was the way he reminded them that success wasn't defined by fame or accolades, but by the courage to embrace, curiosity, and the willingness to grow. And for Dr. Hargrove, it was proof that sometimes the most profound lessons came from the most unexpected places. Though their paths rarely crossed physically, Keanu and Dr. Hargrove remained connected through shared experiences and ideals. Their story became a symbol of possibility, a reminder that no matter where you came from or what you achieved, there was always room to learn, to inspire, and to make a difference. As seasons changed and years passed, the legacy of their collaboration endured, quietly shaping countless lives in ways neither man could have imagined.